So I wanted to introduce everybody to Debbie Houden, who has her PhD and is from the Family Business Consulting Group. She specializes in helping businesses with communication, transition, and development by providing tools and knowledge needed to navigate through each company's specific issues. So I'll turn it over to Debbie for our succession planning webinar. And
thank you very much, Janet. I really appreciate it. And thanks to you guys for being on here. Like I said, I'd love for this to be a conversation. I've got a slide presentation going. I can't see when you comment because my whole computer is, the whole screen is the slideshow. So just interrupt. Say, hey, Deb, wait, go back to that, or let's talk about this, or wait, I have a question on that, or how might you do that, or I'd love you to share any of your war stories. That would be helpful too. We've got an hour. I'm going to keep moving. There might be some slides that I created that we might be answering if we have a conversation, so I'll just deal with that when we get there. I do have a succession checklist that I can send Janet. It's a PDF doc that you can just have for your records to kind of help you go through whatever it is you need to do in order to plan your own succession. So, Janet, I can share that with you at the end. All right?
That would be great. Thank you.
All right. Just so you all know, I am, as Janet said, I'm a consultant with the Family Business Consulting Group, but I've worked with a number of privately held businesses also. And right now we're just in that huge chunk of time where there's a bunch of succession going on, and I think there's some specific challenges that are happening with the era we're in, and we'll talk about that a little bit. I also teach negotiations and work in the School of Business at the University of Wisconsin. So there's a couple of, I have a wonderful opportunity to interact with a lot of businesses who are challenged with a bunch of different problems. So, and not really problems, just challenges, I guess. So, anything that you want to ask, I'm happy to answer to the best of my ability. But succession, I know pretty well, and I've helped families through that. So basically, today's objective is kind of to get you thinking a little bit, because I think one of the biggest challenges that well, let me ask you a question. Is everyone on here, are you the owner of the business?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Rick. Yep. Yeah, Carl, the owner.
Do we have any next generation?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Okay. Let me ask you a question. Are you a son?
Son-in-law.
Son-in-law. Okay. So if I say family, that's okay. I mean, I would assume that they consider you family, not an outlaw, but an in-law, right?
At this point, I do.
Yeah, you have to watch your steps. So basically, today's objectives are to get you thinking. I really want you all to think a little bit more long-term. Now, sometimes that's not possible, and you have to speed up. But if we can think a little bit longer term, it's always more helpful to give you some knowledge, tools, and then, like I said, I'll give that checklist to you and some immediate steps you take, and basically to have a conversation with you. So passing the baton, for those of you, I don't know if I like this slide just because I think about all the work and effort that relay teams do, and they get down to the big moment, like I think about like the Olympics or any of the world races, and they get to that big moment, and if they don't pass it off well, they do all this other stuff, and if they don't pass it off well, they're out of the race. And that can happen. Now, it's not quite that dramatic with businesses, but there is a lot of preparation that can go into place. And sometimes personalities get in the way. Sometimes we expect the next generation to act like us, to like the same people we do, to manage problems the same way that we do. And that's not completely necessary, nor might that be the best for the business going forward. The biggest thing I want seniors to think about, and juniors, I guess juniors too, but what's the health of the business? What specifically are you passing? Are you passing a business that is growing? Are you potentially an owner that has not been really active? And I see this honestly quite a lot. The owner gets to the owner slash president of the company starts to take more and more time off. Other people are doing more of the work, but there's not a lot of thought or investment given into the business. The owner has become tired. So trying to assess the financial health of the company, trying to assess the cultural health of the company, trying to assess how what the strategic plan might look like. Many businesses do not do strategic planning. They aren't thinking in they take business as it goes along, but at this particular point in time, it's important to think strategically about the future and how well the business is poised for that. And it's important for both the senior and junior generation because the senior generation wants to be paid, and typically, it might be gifted, but usually it's paid for. And typically that's over a period of time. And so what is the junior generation or whomever you've pegged, what are they receiving? Maybe you're going to retain ownership but want somebody else to run it. And that's fine too, that's an option. But what are they running? And what are they receiving? Are they receiving this ticking time bomb? Research, there's been a ton of research done on succession planning and some of the challenges that the senior generation might have. Right there, the top one, the personal financial security, is a big one. I've been living off of this company. It's for most people, it's their greatest asset. What does my future look like? I think that commercial right now, I don't know which investment firm does it, but they get people to walk on an arrow and it says, how long will your money last you? And it stops short, like in, 10 years. And you're going, oh my gosh, I'm only going to be 70 years old in 10 years or maybe 75. In this day and age, that's relatively young. So, personal financial security is really something that keeps people stuck. They don't know necessarily how they're going to manage in the future, keep the same lifestyle because many just don't want to pare down and receive the income. And there are ways that you can do this, and your accountant can be very, very helpful with you. Your financial planner can be extremely helpful in helping you set up a situation where your personal financial security is assured. And I think that's one of the bigger reasons for keeping people stuck. They just don't know what it would look like, and there's a level of fear that goes along with losing the control over that, and fear starts to take hold of us and keeps us from acting in a way that we know what to do. So one of the first steps I would do is sit down with your accountant, sit down with your financial planner or a financial planner, and plan out what you need. That gives you a baseline of and helps to make it concrete what you need to go forward. Family security. If some of you are in a family business and it's the senior generation and you're trying to think about passing it down to the next generation and you have more than one family member involved, who gets the nod? How does this create conflict? How does it not create conflict? How do you make this fair? What happens if you have family members in the business and they're not the appropriate ones to take this? Your business has also kept your family in a so that's also, you can have ancillary family members, a spouse, children, get antsy about you transferring out of your business, whether it's out of management or out of ownership. Is the company ready to go forward without you, or are you the workhorse? Are you the one doing all the work? So without you, your company is nothing. And oftentimes, business owners take on more responsibility. That's how they've become successful. And they do a lot. But when it starts to come down to transferring the business, less is better. Because how does that organization survive without you? And this is really where you've got to start pulling back to allow and grow others who can serve that business. And finally, psychological security. Don't underestimate that you have a position in your community, that what you've grown and what you've accomplished give you a lot of satisfaction in your life. It might be hard, but there's a lot of feeling that goes along with ownership of a company and where you're at, and you being able to go in and solve problems and help people. So the psychological security of this, I can't tell you how many people will say, well, what am I going to do with my time? Again, the fear of the unknown keeps people stuck. So think through all of these things, and that sheet that I'll hand out or I'll give to Janet at the end will help you to think through some of these things and capture it on paper. So there's two parts of succession. There's management succession, which is the leadership of the company, and then there's ownership succession, which is estate planning. And excuse me for 1 second. I was working with a company yesterday, and they've done a terrific job. There's two brothers who've built a very successful agricultural business, and one brother has two children in the business, and one of his children is actually now the president. The other brother has one child in the business. And the children are doing a fantastic job of running the business, but they will not receive any ownership of this business until their parents pass. And it's the way the estate plan was set up. It was put into a trust. And the trust was set up, it's a fantastic vehicle for passing down property and wealth into the next generation. However, it keeps complete control of the business in the owner's hands until they pass away. And these are very healthy people. And so the potential of them passing away before the kids are in their 50s and 60s, that's high. So they're asking the children to run the business but not make any decisions about any strategic ownership decisions, including any investment or risk. It's putting the kids' ability to manage the business effectively at risk. So, and it's not necessary that they transfer ownership before they pass, but it would be helpful, and there needs to be a conversation about that with the kids so the kids know exactly what they're getting into. So management succession is typically what most people are thinking about, and oftentimes, and now in a family business, and if you have, like we have the son-in-law here, or there's an offspring that might be involved, there is the thought that the business should be led by them in the future, and that might work out just wonderfully. But before that's ever decided, and for all of you business owners out there and the leaders that we're talking to, you have had to make tough decisions in the past, and that's why your business is successful. This is another tough decision, and you need to look through this and need to back up a little bit and not put the person before the job. So a great exercise to do would be to answer these top 3 questions here. Get your top leadership together. If it's you, maybe it's you and another trusted person. Say, what does this business need in a leader going forward? And that goes right back to what are you passing down? So is it a healthy business? Do you foresee some strategic obstacles in the future? Are there some opportunities that you could take advantage of for this business? So what does the business need in a leader? Not Joe Blow leader, just any leader. Oh, this leader needs to know how to manage a lot of different things. This leader needs to know how to work with structure because the company's growing more. This leader needs to be very charismatic and go out and win jobs. This leader needs to have a strong financial background because really what they're doing is managing all our capital, whatever it might be. And you look for what the business needs first. Second, what are the responsibilities? Are they going to be out? Are they going to be the person out selling jobs? Are they going to be the person out doing the jobs? What are their responsibilities? Are their responsibilities to lead a team? That might be. Then you start getting into, okay, who do we have here that is capable of handling the responsibilities and what the business needs in the future? It's not going to be the same company anymore. The company goes on. Once a transition is made, the company shifts ever so slightly. Potentially it's growing, and that's a whole different set of circumstances than the current leader might need. So trying to figure out who is capable, who can handle the responsibility, and do the employees respect that person? And if you're not sure, have an outside facilitator come in and interview key employees. And I can tell you that a lot of business owners do that. They have somebody come in and they interview key employees, and then that third-party facilitator gives them back a report, and they don't pay attention to it. So you have to be honest with yourself. You have to be honest with what you can and cannot do. If you, if you know that you have somebody in mind and that's just the way it's going to be, then work with that person to talk about the responsibilities they're going to need in order to grow that person. And don't be a referee between between 2 potential or 3 potential successors. Start with those 2 questions up on top first, and then let it percolate from there. So one of the things you have to figure out is, what is a fair process for selecting a successor? And I'm going to go back up there. A fair process, really, truly, is looking at the needs first, the responsibilities second, and the capabilities third. And then you decide, do people have to interview? Are people going to be anointed? What is a fair process? If you're not sure about a fair process, again, you can sit with your top key leadership, 2, 3 people, and develop what you consider is a fair process for selecting that successor. Then, once you do that, you can figure out where the gap is in their strengths and what the business needs, and they can figure out what's needed to get that successor up to speed. And then allow them to show you that they're capable of acquiring those needed skills, that they can take on those responsibilities, and allow them not to be you. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges or mistakes that a next generation can make, is to think that they need to be just like the senior generation. And that's often not the case. It is not a situation where we want the exact same. Now, we might want same values like respect, kindness, integrity, community. You might want those same values, but they don't necessarily have to have the identical skills. Let them show you that they're capable by being self-starting and gaining more responsibilities, being self-starting and getting more schooling if they need to, or more training in particular areas, and set up metrics that they need to achieve that let you know that they're capable of taking this business forward. So how do successors develop? Well, first of all, how well have they done in their own position? Have they been particularly successful? I'm working right now with a construction company where the son is 30 years old. He has already been anointed the successor. And so what's happening is the very first job that they put him in was a sink or swim position. He struggled for a really, really long time because it was a very difficult job. But he created his own situation. They let him struggle. They let him go. They gave him as much support as they could without crippling him. And he is starting to find some success. And he went out and found his own successor as he's ready for the next step. Give them their own position with which they can become successful. Let them know the goals they're going to need to meet. If you can't give them objective feedback, think about getting feedback from other key managers or subordinates, whomever it might be, that can give feedback on how well they're doing with their goals. When you give any people responsibilities, make sure there's metrics attached. People want to know how well they're doing in particular jobs that they're doing. They want to know how they're going to be measured. So give responsibilities with metrics, and that way you also give them accountability. So if I am, well, let's just say, for me, one of my goals when I do training at corporations is to make sure that I keep the participants interested. It's a long day. It's 8 in the morning till 6 at night. Keep them energized, keep them on task, and then there's an evaluation at the end. And I am evaluated on exactly those things, and I get feedback, and that keeps me accountable. And so make sure you're doing that. Make sure people know exactly what they're supposed to be doing, how they're going to be measured, and how they're going to get feedback. And incrementally escalate the challenge. So in the beginning, they should have a somewhat of a knowledge of what their new task role will be, but let them grow into it. Oftentimes, it takes 2 to 3 years to master that particular role. Successors shouldn't be too eager. The senior generation shouldn't be worried if it takes 2 to 3 years to master a particular role. If you can add on successive responsibilities, that's terrific, because that's where it starts to allow that senior generation to back out a little bit more. Keep a pulse on the business and that it's running, the ownership, the financial health is well, and the culture is well, but the senior generation is starting to step back a little bit more, so they're not doing everything, and the company is crippled. The successor is taking on more and more challenges. There are a lot of opportunities for coaches, for mentors. There's a lot of affinity groups, tech groups, Vistage groups. I particularly run 3 different affinity groups. There are a lot of different groups in many areas of the country where people can go in, they meet once a month, they work through problems, and they get information from other people who've already been through it. Mentors or coaches are terrific, especially as that successor is going up through the ladder. I like this slide because I see this a lot. I see where the owner or the leader is starting to step away more and more. They have capable people underneath them, and then they come in to the business after being gone, and they ask questions, and it gets everybody up in arms. They're kind of like a tornado coming in, and then they go back out again, and the whole company has to kind of just settle down a little bit and kind of repair the damage and the I guess, disturbance that the leader has created. Some of you might be smiling. I assume the ones smiling might be successors, the next generation. But I see this time and time again. And it's not necessarily something that is a conscious thing that senior generation is doing. What the senior generation doesn't necessarily recognize is how much power they have. So they walk in, they ask a question just to learn more, and people read it the wrong way. They talk, or they think that they should change the way they're doing it, or the owner might say, wait, why are you doing this one in this way, or what are we doing here, or wait, I have experience with that. I did this in the past, and it throws people into a little bit of a firestorm. So senior generation, you really need to have an open communication pattern in private before you come back away from, let's say, vacation, or maybe you spend some time at a different location during the year. Be very careful about that. You have, or perhaps you don't do it yet. You're on your way to starting to take more time away from the business. Be careful when you come back in that you and I mean physically back into the office, that you don't create this tornado that's going on. All right? I'm going to pause here. Do we have any questions so far? Any thoughts?
For me, this is Brian. You talked about making sure that the choice of successor and how that process goes, and in our situation, I really need to find who my successor is in the current roles that I have, so that I can take on some of Carl's responsibilities. And I think that's been something that I didn't realize was as important as it is, until we've really started to dig into this over the last year or so, making sure that that succession plan runs all the way down through the business, and that there's people ready to step up into the next role, so that people above can move into the role that they're destined to be in. And that's kind of where we are now, is trying to identify those folks, or identify the qualities or responsibilities that will be asked of whomever that person may be, who we may not know them yet. So that's something that I don't think can be focused on enough, is that succession isn't just a owner and a son-in-law, or owner and son, or owner and key employee. It trickles down all through.
Oh, absolutely. Great point. It's a chain, right? I mean, and best companies are reviewing this on an annual basis. Where are we at? Who is potentially in the need of a move, or who's going to be leaving? What's going to be happening? It should be part of your strategic planning process, and at least reviewed on an annual basis. And that way, and so if we go back up to that, and Brian, I really appreciate you saying that. I'm just trying to figure out. Okay, so the biggest thing isn't necessarily on this slide, what does the business need in a leader? It's just what is that role need? And so what we're looking for are qualities. Maybe it's, whatever your role was, what type of person needs to be in that? Is it somebody that is really detail-oriented? Is it somebody that is a really great communicator? Is it somebody that can go out in the public? Whatever it is. So being able to do that with each one of your roles is really important. It takes time, but if you make that a prerogative for everyone, it will help tremendously, and then have responsibilities and metrics with that, and then start training from there. But yeah, thank you. I mean, you're absolutely right, because it is a chain. How can you move up if you have no one to take over your responsibilities? So some of the hazards, the next generation, if it's, as you build people, here's one of the biggest challenges that family businesses have, is the way to the top, or the way to a leadership position in a lot of those businesses, is only if you're a family member. And that's a huge challenge. How do you keep people motivated if they can't grow in their position? And not everybody wants to grow in a position. They're very comfortable mastering their current position, but you have to be careful and keep your finger on the pulse of where people are at and what they want to do. If the next generation isn't thought of and they're kept in their place for a while, they can become angry or alienated. It's not saying that you have to give in to that, but a good communication, and you may lose some potentially good people because there are opportunities elsewhere. And the biggest challenge that I hear right now from every business I work with is finding capable workers. So if you've got capable people, you want to hang on to them because the cost of losing them is so high because you can't find more workers to replace them. It is really a market right now, really a buyer's market. You don't want any conflict within the company with confusion. You try and communicate what's happening with a group of people. I'm starting to, if you're a successor and you're starting to think about this, hey, I'm starting to assess the needs of the company in the future. I'm looking for what we might need in leadership. I will do a thorough review of and keep especially your top management people up to speed on what you're doing. There's a lot of different options for transitioning the ownership. Now, so this is a little bit different now. Here's the ownership part. When we were talking about here, we're talking about the management part. Now we're going into the second part of this, and that's the ownership part. You can keep it in your family and transfer it down. For many of you, again, this is probably one of your biggest assets that you have, and that's up to you. Many families transfer businesses down into the next generation, and the next generation does not even work in the business, and that is completely okay. Many don't have some in the next generation that are remotely interested in the business, so they might sell it. They might sell it to key employees. They might sell it to outside vendors, but again, what are these people buying? And for those of you who are doing way too much and the business would suffer without you there, you are actually driving down the value of your business by doing too much. And you will have a valuation done. They will look at how much the business relies on you particularly as a leader in the company. And if it's too much, the value of your business will go down. So you have to think about that. And it's just an odd way to think about valuation of a business. You can liquidate the business, sell it off, and then finally, with anything that you choose to do, if you're keeping it in the family or you're selling it to key employees, think about a shareholder agreement that you would have between partners that spells out a wide range of stipulations about who can own, when they can sell, what the value is, or how the company is going to be valued, how long they have to pay off certain things. And a shareholders agreement really makes explicit the deal with multiple partners. It's extremely important. If you're a family business, this is where we see the biggest number of lawsuits when there isn't a shareholders agreement or there isn't alignment on the shareholders agreement. And people get very, very upset about it. So that's a whole nother presentation on shareholders agreements, but they're extremely important. They don't have to be really complicated, but there are a particular set of questions you should ask yourself when you're thinking about a shareholders agreement. And then you work through that, and then you give an attorney to draft up legally. Do not let your attorney draft your shareholders agreement without your input. They put in things that are important from their perspective, not yours. So that should definitely be something you think about, you put down on paper, and then you go forward. If any of you are interested, I do have some shareholder agreement questions, and just get in touch with Janet, and I can share those with her, and she can pass them on to you. So how do you get funded if you're selling off the business or how do you get, or how does the next generation help with this purchase? So basically, you can get funding. Many people start to kind of split the business. The real estate, the actual physical property is oftentimes an LLC, and then the business pays rent to the building. That's one of the ways that they can get funding. They have hopefully all of you have started to have some investments outside of the company. Oftentimes we see an entrepreneur or perhaps second generation, and their only asset is the business. And that is honestly putting all your eggs in one basket. Start to develop some assets outside the company. For the person who is, you might be able to have a long-term, which might be beneficial to both of you, a long-term buyout, meaning a 10-year buyout where the successor can pay the owning person over that time period. They can be paid with, there's a lot of different options that can happen. They can either buy in, a bonus plan can help, and they use that bonus money to pay down. There are a lot of different vehicles that can be used over a time period where it helps ease the burden of the next generation, because they're in that stage of life where they don't have a lot of extra capital, and it can keep an income stream coming in for the senior generation. Get a good accountant. A good accountant can really help you come up with different options for getting funding and helping the next generation to fund the purchase. If it's a gift, oftentimes then what you're trying to do is escape any tax consequences, so you're going to need an estate attorney with that one also. Typically when it's a gift, there are enough assets and investments outside of the company that the profits from the company don't necessarily help fund lifestyle. You can also transition some stock and not others. There's a lot of different things that can be done, but make sure the financial independence isn't holding you back. So there are some particular transition steps that are really important to think about as you're going through. First of all, the owner, when we're talking about the ownership succession, you really need to make and talk with your family members. Now, that might just be a spouse. That might be other family members who are in the business. And then talk with them and make a commitment to doing this. Don't just kind of say, yeah, maybe I'll do it, and all of a sudden it's 5 years down the road and nothing has happened, which, believe me, I've been called into those situations often where the senior generation won't let go. They're in their mid-80s. The children are in their late 60s, and they're done working. So now what happens? So make a commitment and follow through. Make sure the company is in good health for the future. So develop or update a strategic plan. It's as simple as doing your SWOT analysis, doing your strengths, your weaknesses, what are your opportunities, and what are the threats for the future. And I would even just look out for the next 3 to 5 years. 5 years is kind of a tough one. I mean, the way the world is changing so rapidly. Commit to a time horizon. If you know you want to be done in 3 years, make it 3 years and put your stake in the ground. Set a date. Say, I want to be done by this time. I want this transition to occur. Now, this can be a management transition. This can be an ownership transition, either one. but commit to a time horizon. A 10-year plan is kind of out there, but it's doable. 5 to 7 years is ideal, and if you have to go even quicker than that, you can make it. If it's 3 years, 2 to 3 years, all I'm saying is commit to that plan, commit to that time, put your stake in the ground, and then work backwards from there. Start developing your financial and estate plans. As I said in the beginning, you need to get in touch with a financial planner and an accountant to see what's going on. Do you need to start minimizing tax consequences? Do you need to have income coming in? What are your needs, and who can help you meet those? Again, start to think about what are the needs of the company and who are the people we have, and what are the responsibilities needed and who can meet those needs. Then you start grooming and mentoring those people. You make your announcement. You empower the next generation by stepping back, and then you transition. So there's a couple of things here. Senior, you've got to set standards. When I say set standards, there has to be metrics. How do you know if somebody is doing well in a job? Are they gaining, and I don't know what it might be. Are they getting more sales? Are they gaining, I don't know, more recognition in the community? Are they a good manager, a process manager? Whatever it might be, make sure you set standards and know how you decide whether somebody is good or not. Oftentimes I get it's just a gut feel. That's a tough one. Your gut feel might be completely accurate, but your gut feel is usually based on a few things that you just haven't put down on paper. Try and do that. Try to integrate there should be ideas there from the successor. Try to get some ideas in there. Take time away from leadership. I've talked about this multiple times now during this presentation. You need to start to step away from the business more and have the next generation step in. Actively and intentionally plan for your post-retirement life. And don't underestimate how fearful your spouse might become. All of a sudden you're changing their life too. You might be around more, you might be expecting more out of them, or they might want to spend more time with you. You've really got to have a conversation about, or just listen to, the feelings of your significant other. For the junior, start to apply yourself. Start to ask for how you're measured on particular things. Start, Brian, as you said, start to recognize that, wait a second, I can't leave a vacuum here either. This is a chain. So starting to assess the readiness of all of the positions in your company is really very important. Let the senior generation give you their wisdom. There is a lot of accumulated knowledge. Malcolm Gladwell, who's a social researcher, starts to talk about how people need at least 10,000 hours at a particular thing in order to have them become an expert at it. These senior generation people have a lot of experience. Don't poo-poo it. You might take that and tweak it. You might take that and not use it, or you might take it and say, yes, that's exactly how we go. But listen and be respectful of the position that they've been in. Try to manage your emotions. You may get frustrated. You may get angry. You may get fearful. But try to manage them in an appropriate way and invest in your relationship with that senior generation. Trying to capture your planning meetings on paper is really important because it gives you a written log of what you've talked about and what you haven't. don't try to write a diary. Just do little bullet points. Okay, we talked about this, 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 and this. Capture it in writing. Have somebody review, hey, is this what we talked about today? Yep, this is what we talked about today. Include your own thoughts in these notes also. So getting it down in writing sometimes can be very helpful with any type of confusion that you might have. A great exercise to do is a fire drill. What happens if Bob, the owner, suddenly gets hit by, well, we're here in Wisconsin, so suddenly gets hit by the beer truck? So what happens to you? What happens to the business? What happens that very first day? Who makes an announcement to your employees? Who gets in touch with the family? Who gets in touch with the bank? Who gets in touch with the attorney? Do you know where all the documents are? Does somebody have power to sign checks? Does somebody know where all of the vehicle registrations are? Does somebody know where all the passwords are? Go through this fire drill. Think about this on the day of, the first week of, the first month of, and the first year of a transition. Get a shareholders agreement together if you don't have one, and think about it for the future. You don't want it to rule in perpetuity. What you want to do is give guidelines and structure for the next generation of owners. Each generation of ownership should have their own shareholders agreement drafted because situations change. You cannot rely on your parents' shareholders agreement or on something that another company has done. This, again, is a process to be talked about. Identify who has the high potential and who's going to be making the choice, and what are the criteria for choosing, and where are the gaps in knowledge and skills. And when you get to that point, you're really good. And as I said, record your planning meeting. The best practices that we know are clear roles and responsibilities. I've kind of harped on that throughout this entire time. Communicate expectations early and often, but don't be wishy-washy. Don't say, yeah, I said yes, I said this the last time, but now I'm extending this another 3 years. There's nothing more demoralizing than a senior generation being wishy-washy about what they might do. The next generation and the current generation, both together, must initiate and support the process. Try to figure out what's your goal. Protect that golden goose that has helped you and your family with financial security and a good business and community, or is it to promote mediocrity? So think about that lit fuse. What are you passing? Develop that fire drill and respect and encourage individual strengths and choices. Start telling people, start with the family, then the company. Once you tell someone else, you have committed yourself to this, and it helps keep you on track. Praise those who've done before, and make sure you emphasize process and goals. That way people are comfortable that you've given a lot of thought to what's going on. Again, we talked a little bit about time frame. 3 years is a good time frame. 5 to 7 is ideal, but probably not realistic. In the beginning, senior generation, you make decisions and the junior generation shadows. For a time period, you should both decide, and then eventually the junior generation makes decisions and you shadow in the background. How do you know that you're going to have a successful transition? You're becoming happy with how you spend your time away from the business. You feel comfortable and you have security of income and finances, have a lot of pride in your accomplishments in the business and the community and in your family, and you feel fulfilled and rewarded. Will there be sadness? Probably. Will there be times that you're not sure you're doing the right thing? Probably. But keep forward going on task, that you are putting your best foot forward for a lot of people's future. as Peter Drucker said, the final test of greatness is how well he or she chooses a successor and whether he can step aside, let the successor run the company. And Stephen Covey says, begin with the end in mind. Who do I want to pass this? Do I want to pass it down, and to whom? How do I want to be remembered? What does my spouse or significant other want? Figure out that valuation of your company. Most valuations come in lower than you think. So get that valuation done. And if you're doing way too much in the business, that valuation is going to be even lower. How much money do I need to feel secure, and what dreams are still out there for me? I have, wow, okay. Well, we started a little bit later. I haven't given you a ton of time for questions, but would love to open it up to any questions that you might have.
Anybody?
No, that was great, Deb. Thank you.
You are welcome. I will pass that checklist on to Janet once we get off the phone here. And if anybody has any interest in shareholder agreement questions, let Janet know, and I'll pass along a checklist too.
Can you pass along both those to me? Would you mind?
Oh, sure. That'd be no problem at all.
That would be great. I appreciate it.
Sure.
One of our annual meeting and owners forums coming up, and one of the pieces is planning, and we're doing breakouts, and everyone got to choose, and there is a good amount that shows succession planning. So I think that little checklist might be a good little thing to share with them, as well as they'll get the recorded webinar.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds terrific. Good.
You did a great job. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. These are a little weird. You know, I don't get a ton of interaction, and I talk way too much. So I appreciate everyone's being on the line and listening.
You did great.
Thanks, Deb. That was great. And thanks, Janet, Tim. Appreciate it.
You are welcome. And once this downloads, you'll probably get a recording end of day, maybe tomorrow sometime. We'll send it out to everybody so that you have it. And then thanks to all of you for joining us. And Deb, you did a great job. We really appreciate it. Thanks for being a great resource for us. And we'll be in touch soon. And I will look forward to getting that succession checklist and the shareholder agreement questions from you to share with those that were on the call.
That sounds terrific. All right. Good luck, everyone. And especially if you're in the Midwest, enjoy the beautiful weather. And take care.
You too. Take care. Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.